Yes, thank you everyone for being here. We hope that you find this information helpful and that you leave with a better understanding of the college search process for students with disabilities. So we're going to go ahead and get right into our topic. The first thing we want to talk about is that here in the world of education, we use a lot of acronyms. And there's definitely not a shortage of acronyms that we use in FCPS, particularly in career and transition services. The first term that we would like to explain is ETR, which stands for Employment and Transition Representative. And there is an ETR at each FCPS high school. Some high schools have 2 ETRs. And they are there to support students with IEPs as they transition to a variety of post-secondary options, including college. ETRs help coordinate transition services for students with IEPs, and that includes collaborating with the student's case manager, IEP team, school counselor, as well as the college and career specialist. And the ETR serves as a resource for students, families, and school staff. So if you are a student with an IEP or you're a parent of a student with an IEP and you're not sure who the ETR is at your high school, we definitely encourage you to find out. Our website is linked here at the bottom of this slide for more information on career and transition services. So sometimes a student is approaching their graduation and they may experience increased stress, maybe excitement, or even anxiety. And it's possible that students may hear certain things or rumors about the college application process, and it's easy to get facts confused with myths. We want to take a moment to focus on some important facts. Number one, the college admissions process is the same for everyone, regardless of their disability status. In addition, having an identified disability has no bearing on the admissions decision. Oftentimes in my work with students and families or students would ask, even during IEP meetings, they would ask, where on the application should I state that my child has a disability or that they had an IEP in high school? And nowhere on the application does a student need to identify as having a disability. We also want to note that students with disabilities, they're a rapidly growing minority at U.S. colleges and universities. Recent figures have shown that about 19% of undergraduates identify as having a disability. So these are some other insights and observations that we want you to keep in mind as students are going through the college search process. Going back to that 19% figure that we talked about in the last slide, we also want to point out that the majority of students with disabilities choose not to utilize disability support services in college. In my experience, when I've gone over the accommodations process with my students, many have said to me, look, I've spent all these years in high school with an IEP, I'm tired of labels, and I just want to do this on my own. I want to try this on my own. And while I respect that view 100% and I understand where they're coming from, I still suggest to them that they consider just going through that process when they find out what college they're going to be enrolling in. They could always just have the accommodations in place and choose not to use them. We're going to talk about this process a lot more. It's important to be aware that the accommodations are not retroactive. We also want to point out that students with disabilities who are successful in college have strong self-advocacy skills. Students need to know where to go for help, how to get it, and who to ask. A great place to start asking for help is with that Disability Support Services office. When I'm working with students, I always try and remind them, don't make assumptions. Read and ask questions. No question is too silly or dumb. And although every college has to offer some level of disability services, it's really important to remember that no two institutions are the same. Support can range from minimal support or accommodations just to meet ADA requirements to a specialized program designed for a specific population of students. Students should think about what type of supports they're going to need to help them guide their search. So a saying that I kept at one of the schools I used to work at was that college is a match to be made, not a prize to be won. It's always resonated in my work with students because our students with disabilities have unique needs. It's so important to keep multiple factors in mind during the college search process. Finding a good fit for students with disabilities is very important. In addition, research shows that finding the right college can improve students' persistence in post-secondary education and can also increase opportunity for job placement. That being said, here are some considerations or factors that you may want to think about as you're going through this process. These bullets are simply meant to be used as a guide or discussion points between students and those who are supporting them in their college search. The ultimate goal for our students is not necessarily to get into a top institution. We want our students to be successful and thrive wherever they are, graduate, and speaking from the parents' perspective, most of all, be happy. As we said it before, and a theme to this presentation, find out what disability support services are offered. Visit the office, ask questions, and get a feel for how that level of support is going to work for you. While students are still in high school, students with IEPs, teachers, staff, and administrators do strive to make students' experience meaningful, supportive, and positive. There are a wide range of support services, classes, and even staff to help students along the way. In preparation for college, we have some questions pertaining to specific skills that you may want to consider. As a student or parent of a student, you may want to start asking yourself, does this student or do I have good decision-making, problem-solving, or even conflict resolution skills? If they don't have those skills yet, that's okay, especially for our juniors and underclassmen. Now it's time to start building and practicing those skills. Another very important factor which we find critical to student success is time management. Oftentimes in K through 12 education, we refer to skills such as time management skills as executive functioning skills. And basically that means, can a person manage their time effectively? Can they organize and synthesize information? Can they prioritize goals, needs, deadlines, and dates? And finally, we're going to mention self-advocacy again, which is the biggest predictor of post-school success, is what research shows. Can the student reach out and voice their strengths and needs to others? This is critical. As we've discussed, the transition process can bring about a range of thoughts and emotions. Although this can and should be an exciting time for our students, some students have shared that it can be scary and daunting, and that's completely normal. Oftentimes, students may want to go through this process on their own and may not want the support of family or staff. From the parent perspective, we know that parents want to be there for their son or daughter. We want to be supportive and positive so that at the end of the day, the student is successful. So this slide has just a few tips on how students and parents can work collaboratively and use their skills in the college search process. Also, for some of you parents out there, this may help reduce some of the conflict between students and parents. So for students out there listening, be self-aware, know your strengths, and know areas of development. We all have them. Communicate your needs and skills. Start by searching colleges online. One resource that we want to share with you that hopefully you all are aware of is Naviance Student. You're probably already familiar with it. Collegeboard.org is also an excellent resource to search schools and find quick, accessible information. This is a good way to begin simply exploring colleges. Then take it to the next step and visit schools either virtually or in person, depending on the availability and your comfort level, of course, given the times that we're in. If you do go in person, don't forget to check out that Office of Disability Support Services. Another really important thing to take advantage of are those college visits that take place in your school's college and career centers. This is a great way to get information about schools that may not be available on the school's website, talk to a rep, and get some questions answered. So parents, how can you be involved? As students are searching, they're going to have so much information, and as a parent, you could help them organize that info in a meaningful manner. This can allow you to work alongside your student as they develop an appropriate level of independence. You can, of course, help your student plan college visits and do that together. And I do want to address the final bullet under the parent list. It relates to money and finances. I've been doing this for many years, and always when I sit down to plan with my students, I ask them, have you had a conversation with your parent or guardian about paying for college? If they haven't, I really encourage them to have that discussion. As a parent, we know that there may be a certain amount of funds that you can contribute to your child's education. We also know that many high school students may not necessarily be thinking long-term about the total cost of their education. And next, Naomi is going to talk about some differences between high school and college.
Thank you, Maggie. I think you made some great, provided some great tips and techniques for students and parents to really think about what they can do in high school to the transition to college. So really what I'm going to focus on this slide is really the next couple of slides are kind of a little legality. So I don't want to spend too much time on them, but provide you with an idea of the difference. So in high school, they really focus on the individual education plan, the IEP, in the least restrictive environment. So it's really about success. In college, we provide equal opportunity to fully participate. So making sure that you have everything you need to be at the same level of other students. So it's providing access. So accommodations could look very different, and some could be very similar. So we'll get a little bit more into what those could look like. Going a little bit more over, the law, higher education, we do follow under ADA law and then Section 504 the Rehabilitation Act. We also, depending on the university or the college you're looking at, if there is housing on that college, they do look at the Fair Housing Act also.
Okay, thank you, Naomi. So let's take a look at the two graphics here. I'm going to address the high school experience, and Naomi is going to talk about the college-university experience. In high school, students with disabilities are supported by school staff in the legislation that Naomi mentioned on the previous slide, IDEA. Within a high school setting, this law ensures that students with disabilities receive a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. When a student with a disability is enrolled in K-12 education, parents, as we know, play a vital role in supporting their student. So here in this graphic, we see that all stakeholders play an important role: the parents, the student, and the educators. In high school, we all know that parents have easy access to students' grades. They have a Assist Parent View account here in FCPS, and report cards are even mailed home in some instances. When a student has an IEP, the student, the parent, the case manager, and other team members facilitate the IEP process. School staff ensure the student receives the accommodations and services that were outlined in the IEP, and teachers are also made aware of the student's identified disability. In high school, homework and assignments are generally assigned on a regular basis and due next class or in future classes. Going along with that, the student has a consistent daily schedule, which they're accustomed to. And while the student is still in high school, they're considered a child, which enables parents to actively advocate and communicate with their child's teachers and other IEP team members without student permission. Finally, teachers can reach out to parents to share updates, student successes, or struggles or concerns.
And in college, I'm going to kind of do the flip side of what college looks like is a student has to self-disclose. A student has to seek out the Office of Disability Services and say, hey, I want to connect with you. What do I need to do? So it's really the student's that responsibility to seek us out. Professors can't tell a student, hey, you have to do this. Parents can't tell a student, hey, you have to do this. We highly recommend it. However, it is ultimately up to the choice of the student to self-disclose to us. Student facilitates accommodations. Once a student decides to register with Disability Services at Mason or any other university, accommodations are discussed and agreed upon together. Then a student at some universities, a student would receive a letter stating these are the approved accommodations. It is a student's responsibility to provide that letter to each of their faculty members. Now at some schools, so you would want to check out this process at whatever school you are interested in, the Disability Services Office might email the letter to the faculty member once a student lets them know, hey, please email it to my faculty. So each university and college is going to be a little bit different there, so you want to make sure what the process is at the school that you're looking at. Grades go to students. Students are responsible for managing and reviewing their grades. Parents will not get a copy of the student's grades. It is 100% going to the student. Parents can talk to the student about what is going on and have that conversation, but it's really up to the student what the student discloses to you. Students and professors have contact with each other. Oftentimes they get parents trying to reach out to faculty members, and most likely faculty members will not respond to a parent. They will only respond to the student. So that's one of the largest differences. I hear from families that is a change for them. Students are considered adults, and parents can provide support. And in a way, we say support in disability services specifically. We should, like the initial meeting that students connect with us, we always invite parents to join us as long as your son or daughter or child is okay with that happening. If your child does not want the parents involved, we respect the child and have that meeting without parents. Let's see. Another thing when I say parents can provide support, I think parents can, when they go to orientation or looking at schools, I think it's helpful for parents to say, hey, these are the resources. You know, maybe help your child find what resources are available at each university, especially if you're doing college tours right now or anything along those lines. That would be helpful for them. Weekly schedules and syllabus. So the syllabus have all the due dates, majority I would say, have all the due dates for the students. So when the students that first day or second day of class, the professor provides a packet, usually anywhere from 3 to 10 pages of this is what we're going to go over this semester. And those include typically the dates that things are due. So it's really up to the student to monitor their time and really have that time management to know when to work on specific assignments. Some professors are great at providing updates and reminders of when things are due, and others just say, I put it in the syllabus and it's expected to be done. So that's really important, I would say, at this time, to really start practicing on those time management skills if you haven't already.
Thank you, Naomi. Such valuable information. So prior to actually speaking with the Disability Support Services Office, and by the way, I do want to just point out that it may not be called DSS office at every college. It may be called something else like Student Support Services or Student Services, but every college does have an office responsible for providing accommodations under ADA. Prior to actually reaching out to that office, we've listed here some things that you may want to consider or questions you may want to ask when you speak with a staff member. The student may want to start by just asking, what services do you provide? Do you have any specialized programs? The next one is huge. What documentation is required in order to be eligible for accommodations? How do faculty members know if the student has a disability? There are no IEP meetings in college. Can students do walk-ins, or do they have to have an appointment? And finally, how are accommodations for other things outside of class process, things like housing and meal plans?
So I'm going to walk you through the steps to register with the Disability Services Office. And this is pretty standard across most universities and colleges. So once, I already mentioned the self-disclose process. Once a student determines that I want to register with Disability Services and self-disclose that I have a disability, the Disability Services Office most likely will have you complete an intake form. And the intake form is your information, what accommodations have you used in the past, a little bit about your disability coming from the student, and what accommodations are you seeking out. And then most likely they will ask for appropriate documentation to support their disability, their condition that they are seeking services for. And when I say appropriate documentation, it typically needs to come from someone that is a relevant treating healthcare provider to their condition disability. For example, if you have ADHD and you turn something in from your dentist, that might get quite, and I bring that story up, you might be laughing, and we've had it happen. So we want to make sure that we are very specific on what appropriate means for this. And then, and I will say, so they're also legally, we're also being asked as disability services offices to say if we see someone has a disability, right? If we can tell somebody is in a wheelchair or low vision and use a cane and is blind, then we might not need documentation for that, because what they are asking for can very much make sense with us just visually seeing and using our professional opinion. A student is an adult. Most of the conversation will be directed to the student, whether parents are in there or not. I will speak specifically for George Mason, but we value parents' input. We do believe that the parent knows their son or daughter or child the best, and we want their input, should that be okay with the child and the student. And then once accommodations are granted, they receive a letter, and accommodations are provided from the student to the professor Mason. And then from there, if it's a housing accommodation, usually the Disability Services Office works with housing. If it's a meal plan accommodations, they work with dining. And then students, we really leave it up to students to advocate for themselves and or let us know if they need help. It's not typical for a Disability Services Office to reach out to the individual again saying, hey, how can we help you? We really wait for the student to come back to us to say, hey, I try to do this and I need help. I need you to help me communicate with my faculty. So that's really the student's responsibility to kind of let us know what's going on with them. Now, I will say if a student chooses not to disclose, absolutely, I will say at George Mason, we have 7% of our population is registered with us. And if you remember back to the statistics from the very beginning from Maggie, there's 19% of college students. So if we looked at George Mason, we can assume 19% of students at George Mason have a disability condition. And that doesn't mean everyone needs to register with Disability Services, and that's okay. But that also means there might be students that do need our support but have decided not to register with us. So just want to remind students that if you think you might need our support, please register with us, because accommodations aren't retroactive. Oftentimes we do get students who come to our center their junior year, and they are coming to us because we're like a last resort, and if they don't get accommodations and utilize them, they sadly might get dismissed from the university. So we always want to prompt people to come to us prior to any type of those situations happening. So documentation, I kind of spoke a little bit about this. So really what the purpose of documentation is for the Disability Services Office to understand the impairment, specifically for the individual. So for example, if someone has ADHD, that might affect and look different from one person than it might for another. And so it's really helpful for us to understand what it looks individually for that person. We want to make sure that there's a relationship between the disability and accommodation. And students can provide 504s and IEPs. However, typically more information will be asked on documentation. So documentation we're really looking for is from a treating healthcare provider, not necessarily what you've received in the past. That doesn't really weigh heavily in our decisions, but that does help us understand what has been helpful for you in the past. So you can provide the IEPs in 504, but most likely other universities, including Mason, would ask for additional documentation. Really quick, just really quick. Should a student need an updated evaluation or just an evaluation in general? It is at the student's expenses. Universities and colleges do not provide that service. There are some select colleges, I will say, that might have a fund, depending on people's income, that they can request to help them pay for that evaluation, but not all schools do. So if that is a concern of yours, you might want to inquire, but it's not legally mandated that they have to help with that expense. So what do reasonable accommodations look like? So they ensure equal access. They do not success. So even if a student has accommodations, that does not mean that they're going to pass the course or do well at college. All schools that have any type of housing will have accommodations for housing. So at Mason, we often have students request a single room or possibly closer access to a restroom or kitchen access depending on their needs. Some universities have different type of waivers you can request. So for example, at Mason, should someone have a language disability or a mobility disability that they would struggle with speaking, they can request a foreign language waiver because at Mason, all students are required to take foreign language. Now that's not the same for every university. So if you feel that a foreign language waiver is needed, it is important for you to check with the university to see if that's an option there. Quantitative reasoning, some universities have an option to possibly waive the basic math that all students are required to take. Now, when I say basic math course, that is like at Mason, and at most universities, there are core courses. So there are courses that all students are expected to take no matter their major. And so at Mason, if someone was requesting quantitative reasoning waiver, it would be for Math 106, which is that basic course all students are required to take. Now, if you're going to be an engineering major and you requested quantitative reasoning, that's most likely not going to be accepted because there's so much math already necessarily in that major. So the quantitative reasoning is more for students like going on wanting to be a history major, communication major, something that is not quantitative based. Students might need classroom furniture. For example, if you're in a wheelchair and you need to pull, some of those classrooms have the desk and the chair connected. So you might need to just have a desk where you can just pull up. So we do place furniture. Some students are not able to take a full 12 credit reduced course load. So we can have them take 9 credits and be considered a full-time student at 9 credits instead of the 12. Accommodations cannot fundamentally alter the course. So meaning if the purpose of the course is communication based and to have that conversation as a group because that's how the professor evaluates the learning. And if you want an accommodation not to speak in the course, that would probably fundamentally alter the course. And so we really also take into consideration the courses the students are taking based on accommodations. So what is a reasonable accommodation? So reasonable accommodation would be extended time on tests, quizzes, and exams, typically time and a half. So if you are used to unlimited time, that's most likely not going to happen in college. So if you can somehow adjust to getting used to time and a half, possibly double time, this might be a good time to start that. Reduce distraction environment. So at Mason and other schools, not all, but I would say 80% of universities and colleges, you can request to have a reduced distraction environment for testing. So instead of testing in the large classroom with 50 plus students, maybe there's another room on campus where you can test where there's only maybe 5 or 10 students. The ability to audio record lectures, closed circuit television system, so CCTV for students who are low vision. Priority registration. All students at Mason that register with Disability Services have priority registration, meaning they get to register with the first day registration opens. I don't know if you know much about college registration, but if you don't, usually it's seniors get to register first, then juniors, and then freshmen get to register last. So at Mason, after your first semester, you get priority registration and get to register with all the seniors like everyone else. Now, other universities, that's considered an individual accommodation. So if that's something you feel like you need, that would be something you'd want to talk about. And we provide, all universities and colleges would provide interpreters, American Sign Language interpreters for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. Okay, so what will we do? Of course, Disability Services will empower students to make their own choice. We will coordinate accommodations with students and faculty, housing, meal plans, depending on the type of accommodation. Monitor discrimination issues. So if a student's not getting their accommodations, that's when a student really needs to let us know, and we can definitely help that student and or have that communication with the faculty member. We ensure accessibility and protect confidentiality. Every student that registers with Disability Services, their disability is confidential and stays in our office. And Even when a student gets accommodations, it's on the letter and or the Disability Services Office sends letter, it does not say the student's disability or functional limitations. It just says this student with the name has been approved for these accommodations and you need to honor them. Registering with Disability Services is not on anyone's transcript, degree. No one will know that they are connected with our office. What we will not do, we don't monitor academic progress. We don't force a student to use their accommodation. We don't call a student to remind them to go to class, nor, we often get this question a lot, nor do we monitor medication management. We do not provide academic tutoring. However, we can provide students with the resources to receive academic tutoring on campus like any other student. Anytime a student registers with the Disability Services Office, Mason or other schools, they do fill out a consent form. And that consent form provides the office with information on who they can speak with. So for example, there are some students saying, hey, can you reach out to my academic advisor and let them know instead of the 12 credits, I really need to take 9 credits. There are also times where we get to know the families and the students very well and how to best work with them. And the families and students might be like, hey, I have a struggle working with faculty. Would you mind that first communication, you help me set up that meeting so I get to know them and they get to know me? So we're willing to assist, with that. And then eventually, at the freshman year, we're at Mason, we're very much willing to help and assist as much as we can. And we want students to also learn and grow. And so we kind of wing our support off when it comes to not accommodations, but more how we can support them individually from our office so students can learn how to gain those skills for themselves, but we'll help them get there. At Mason, we do have 2 fee-based programs, and many other universities also have fee-based programs. So fee-based programs are programs beyond the standard accommodations. So at Mason, we have the Executive Functioning Program. I'm not going to spend terribly much time on these, but I just want to let you know what options there are should you feel that you're going to need additional support at college. So at Mason, we have the Executive Functioning Program, and this program is specifically for students who have executive functioning difficulties. So there's someone that will sit with them, go over their syllabus, kind of create a plan, meet with them weekly to make sure they're on track. And then we have the Massey program, the Mason Autism Support Program. And this program is a more comprehensive program. So there's a peer mentor, a learning strategist, skills building class, and monthly social events. And this program is specifically for students with autism. There's more on our website if you want information, but like I mentioned, many other schools have fee-based programs. So if you feel like your child's going to need more support, look what support's available at the university that you're looking at to see what makes sense and what's going to best support them. Okay, so what can you do to advocate for yourself? So schedule meetings early in the semester. Talk with the Disability Services Office. Be on time and communicate. It is so important for a student once they feel they need our services to reach out to us right away so we can get those accommodations put into place. Deadlines are important. The Office of Disability Services does not waive deadlines. So if there is a deadline to apply for housing, a financial aid deadline, a registration deadline, it is important that those deadlines are met for all students with or without a disability.
All right, thank you, Naomi. So remember, students and parents, that this process doesn't have to be scary. It's an exciting time, so be prepared and get involved. I often share with my students that knowledge is power. Use what you have available now while you're in high school to learn more about yourself, what your interests are, what your values are. Learning more about yourself will really help you in this process. And research all of your options. Not everyone's path has to look the same. Maybe you want to start out at Nova and then transfer to a school like GMU. So get involved, ask those questions, and get the answers. If you don't already, find staff members and mentors that you connect with. And you definitely want to do that once you're in college too. College is a time to gain marketable skills so that you'll be successful, and consider giving time and talent back to your community. That could be any community, or school, or religious organization, or spiritual center, a club, or organization that you're part of. Colleges want to see that, and it will help you prepare for your future as well. And finally, just listed a few resources here for you. The top is just students with disabilities preparing for post-secondary education. It's put out by the Virginia Department or the U.S. Department of Education. It contains a lot of the information that we talked about, information on the ADA and the differences in the laws. We also mentioned Naviance Student. That's a great resource that you have right at your fingertips. Every FCPS student has an account. You can use it to help facilitate college and career planning. Career and transition services, we also have several events throughout the school year that UTRs share out, so hopefully you'll hear about those and attend those as well. And we have a podcast, and the link is on this page as well. And I believe, Naomi, you had a couple of resources there at the bottom. I don't know if you want to mention anything about those.
Yeah, these are both of these resources at the bottom do discuss accommodations in higher ed and also in the workforce. We often, most people are going to college to, pursue that career. And so it's also important to understand how accommodations can also work in the workforce. So both of these links at the very bottom are very helpful.